Dark.
Now, an international team of researchers have found new evidence that a famous formation in Turkey could be...
We now know that at that time, between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, truly global cataclysmic events involving rapid rises in sea
Nestled amidst the majestic summit of Mount Ararat, in the untamed region of eastern Turkey, is a location shrouded in mystery and fascination. Explorers, archaeologists, and Christians have been enthralled with the enigmatic tale of Noah's Ark for ages. And now, rumors are spreading that an ancient ark has recently been found in Turkey, with parts of it being excavated for the first time ever. What exactly did researchers find, and why is this discovery capturing global attention? In this episode, we explore the evidence, the mystery, and what it could mean for history itself. Like, comment below, and share this video. Let's begin. High above the rugged terrain of Mount Ararat, where the wind cuts across volcanic rock and silence stretches for miles, something unusual has been hiding, buried beneath layers of earth for what could be thousands of years. For decades, this region has been surrounded by whispers, stories passed down, dismissed by some, defended by others. But recently, those whispers turned into data. An international team of researchers arrived at a remote site known as the Durupinar Formation. From the air, it had always looked strange, an elongated shape, almost too symmetrical to ignore. But this time, they didn't come with speculation. They came with technology. Using ground-penetrating radar and advanced 3D imaging, they began scanning beneath the surface. What they expected to find was natural rock, chaotic, uneven, random. What they actually saw was something else entirely. The scans revealed straight lines, long, uninterrupted, and precise. Right angles formed where nature rarely produces them. Beneath the surface, there appeared to be a repeating internal structure, divided into sections, compartments, layers. It didn't look like a mountain. It looked organized. And then came the detail that made even seasoned researchers pause. The overall shape and proportions of this buried structure closely resembled the ancient description found in the Book of Genesis. A massive vessel, built with purpose, designed to endure something catastrophic. Coincidence? Possibly. But the deeper they scanned, the harder it became to dismiss. Because this wasn't just one anomaly, it was a pattern. A pattern that repeated, aligned, and held consistency across multiple readings. Something was down there. Not just rock, not just random formation. Something structured, something unexplained. Is this Noah's Ark? If this discovery makes you question what we've always believed, comment below. I believe there's more beneath the surface. Now, stay with me, because what comes next only gets more unsettling. As researchers moved from scanning to sampling, the focus shifted from shapes to substance. The first breakthrough came from the soil itself. Samples taken from inside the formation showed something unusual. Compared to the surrounding land, the soil contained significantly higher levels of organic material. Not just random traces, but concentrations that suggested something had once existed there, something that had decayed over time. Even more intriguing, the mineral composition didn't match the outer layers. It was as if the ground beneath the structure had been altered, changed by something that once occupied that space. And then came the discoveries around the site. Scattered nearby were several massive stone formations, each carved with a distinct hole near the top. To some researchers, these resembled ancient anchor stones, similar to those used in early maritime cultures to stabilize large vessels in turbulent waters. A ship anchored high in the mountains. It sounds impossible, but the stones were real, and their placement raised more questions than answers. Fragments of what appeared to be petrified wood were also reported. Long, flat, plank-like shapes. Some even claim to detect traces of metallic material embedded within the structure, though this remains heavily debated. Critics argue these could be natural mineral formations, while others insist the patterns look far too intentional. But perhaps the most compelling moment came when researchers lowered specialized cameras into drilled openings beneath the surface. What the footage revealed was not chaos. Inside the darkness, the cameras captured defined spaces, clear divisions, repeating layouts, and hollow sections that resembled chambers, not jagged cracks, not random cavities. But something structured, something organized. The shapes suggested internal compartments, areas that appeared separated with purpose. And, as the camera moved deeper, the same patterns began to repeat, again and again. For scientists trained to expect randomness in geological formations, this was deeply unsettling, because nature, as complex as it is, rarely produces such consistency in hidden structures like these. Still, caution remained. No official claim was made, no confirmation declared, only a growing tension between what was expected and what was being seen. Because at this point, the evidence wasn't proving anything definitively, but it was doing something just as powerful. It was making it harder to explain it away. And sometimes, in discoveries like this, the real shift doesn't happen when something is proven. It happens when doubt begins to crack. If you're still watching and want to follow this mystery to the end, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, because what comes next may challenge even more than just the surface. Until this point, everything could still be explained, at least in theory, as geology, coincidence, or misinterpretation. But what came next shifted the focus entirely, from structure to life. As excavation efforts continued, researchers began analyzing materials recovered from within and around the deeper layers of the site. What they found wasn't just soil or stone, it was biological. Fragments of bone, small, scattered, and partially preserved, began to appear in samples taken from different sections. At first, they seemed unremarkable, but as analysis progressed, something strange emerged. Some of these fragments didn't match local species. Comparative studies suggested similarities to animals that, today, are native to entirely different regions, parts of Africa, parts of Asia. This raised a difficult question. How could remains of geographically distant species end up buried together in a single location, high in the mountains of eastern Turkey? Was it coincidence, contamination, or something far older, far more complex? The discoveries didn't stop there. Among the most unexpected findings were ancient seeds preserved in conditions that should not have allowed them to survive intact. Unlike modern crops, these seeds showed no signs of genetic modification or hybridization. Their structure appeared pure, untouched. To some researchers, this was simply a rare case of preservation, but others began to consider a different possibility, that these seeds were not randomly deposited, but intentionally stored, preserved for a purpose. And then came the detail that pushed the boundaries even further. Microscopic analysis revealed unusual repeating patterns within the genetic structure of some samples. While not fully understood, these sequences appeared organized, almost like a coded system embedded within the biology itself. Not artificial, but not entirely random either. It was subtle, but enough to spark debate. If these findings were accurate, they hinted at something beyond natural accumulation, something that suggested selection, preservation, even design. The implications were unsettling, because if different species from different regions appeared together in one confined structure, and if biological material seemed preserved in a way that defied expectation, then the question was no longer just about what the structure was. It became a question of what it may have carried. And suddenly, the idea that this site could be connected somehow to an event involving the preservation of life no longer felt like pure speculation. It felt possible, but with every new answer came a deeper uncertainty. Because the more the team uncovered, the less this discovery looked like a simple geological formation, and the more it began to resemble something that had once held purpose, intention, and perhaps something alive. And just when the discoveries seemed difficult enough to explain, the situation became even more unsettling. Because what researchers began to detect wasn't just physical evidence, it was activity. It started with thermal imaging. Cameras were positioned around key drill points to monitor environmental changes inside the sealed chambers. At first, the readings appeared unstable, flickers of heat that came and went, easy to dismiss as equipment interference. But then, the patterns stabilized. Shapes began to form, not clear enough to identify but too defined to ignore. These weren't random fluctuations, they appeared consistent, repeating. As if something inside the sealed sections was holding temperature differently from the surrounding rock. Naturally, scientists approach this with caution. Equipment can fail, sensors can misread. But when multiple devices began recording similar anomalies, the uncertainty grew. And then came the DNA analysis. Samples taken from deeper layers revealed traces linked to ancient human ancestry. That alone wasn't shocking. But alongside those markers were additional sequences, fragments that didn't match any known database. Not modern, not fully ancient, not fully understood. The results didn't confirm anything definitive, but they introduced something new, unknown variables. And perhaps the most controversial discovery of all came from a small fragment recovered near a collapsed chamber. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary mineral, but under light, it reflected a faint blue glow. When scanned, the readings spiked, showing unusual electromagnetic activity. Instruments nearby began to behave erratically. Compasses shifted, signals distorted. It was quickly isolated for safety. To skeptics, this could be explained by rare mineral compositions, but to others, it added another layer to an already complex puzzle, because this wasn't just a structure anymore. It was a site producing effects that researchers couldn't immediately explain. Taken individually, each anomaly might be dismissed, but together, thermal signatures, unidentified genetic markers, electromagnetic interference, they formed a pattern, not of proof, but of possibility. And as the investigation continued, one question began to echo more loudly than before. Are we only uncovering what was left behind? Or are we disturbing something that was meant to remain hidden? Because whatever lies beneath that mountain, it may not be as silent as we once believed. Stay with me, because what comes next connects this discovery to something far bigger than a single location. Could the structure beneath Mount Ararat be connected to the ancient flood stories found across the world? When this discovery is placed within the wider context of human history, it begins to feel less isolated and more like part of a much larger pattern. Accounts of a great flood appear across civilizations separated by time and geography, yet they share striking similarities. From the narrative recorded in the Book of Genesis to the ancient Mesopotamian account known as the Epic of Gilgamesh, the same core elements appear repeatedly: a catastrophic flood, a chosen survivor, and a vessel built to preserve life. More than 200 cultures have documented variations of this story. These civilizations had no known connection, yet they describe events that follow nearly identical structures. This consistency challenges the idea that these accounts are purely symbolic or invented. Many historians suggest that these stories may be rooted in real events, particularly large regional floods that reshaped early human settlements. Such disasters could have left lasting impressions, eventually preserved and passed down through generations as cultural narratives. What stands out, however, is not just the flood itself, but the repeated emphasis on preservation. These accounts consistently include the deliberate act of saving life animals, seeds, and human lineage. This detail becomes especially significant when compared to findings at the site, where researchers have identified internal divisions, biological traces, and possible signs of organized structure beneath the surface. While there is still no scientific confirmation linking this formation to any historical vessel, the parallels are difficult to ignore. The connection between ancient narratives and modern observations introduces a layer of complexity, that science alone has not yet resolved. At the same time, researchers remain cautious, emphasizing that evidence must be verifiable and repeatable. Even so, there is growing acknowledgement that large-scale flood events did occur in the ancient world, even if they were not global in scope. If this made you see history differently, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts below. As the investigation continues, attention turns to what science can actually confirm. Modern scans show that a structure does exist beneath the surface near Mount Ararat. Ground-penetrating radar reveals consistent patterns, straight lines, internal divisions, and symmetrical shapes that do not fully match typical natural formations. These results have been repeated, meaning they cannot be easily dismissed as error. However, beyond the structure itself, certainty becomes limited. There is still no verified evidence of wood, tools, or clearly man-made materials. No artifact has been confirmed as belonging to an ancient vessel. This is where scientific caution becomes critical. Geologists offer another explanation. They suggest the formation could be natural, created over time by sediment layers, pressure, and erosion. In some cases, these processes can produce shapes that appear organized or even artificial. This creates a clear divide. The structure is real and measurable. Its origin remains unknown. For science, evidence must be tested and confirmed through multiple independent studies before any conclusion can be accepted. Until then, the site remains unresolved. Not proven, but not fully explained. As more information emerges, the discovery no longer sits quietly within one field of study. Instead, it begins to spark a wider debate, one that stretches beyond geology and into belief, history, and interpretation. For many who hold to the account in the Book of Genesis, the structure near Mount Ararat feels like a possible confirmation of something long accepted by faith. The dimensions, the internal divisions, and the idea of preservation all seem to reflect details that have been passed down for generations. To them, the discovery does not create belief, it reinforces it. On the other side, skeptics approach the findings with caution. They point out that nature can produce complex and symmetrical patterns under the right conditions. Without clear, verifiable artifacts, such as preserved wood or tools, there is no scientific basis to conclude that the structure is man-made. For them, the burden of proof remains high, and speculation cannot replace evidence. Historians take a different angle. Rather than focusing on whether the structure is the Ark, they look at the broader context, how flood narratives appear across cultures, and how such stories may have been shaped by real events in the ancient world. Scientists, meanwhile, remain grounded in data. Their role is not to confirm belief, but to test what can be measured. They acknowledge the unusual patterns, but emphasize that interpretation must follow evidence, not the other way around. This creates a space where multiple perspectives coexist. Faith sees meaning, science seeks proof, history looks for patterns, and somewhere between them, the mystery remains unresolved, yet impossible to ignore. As the investigation reaches its final stage, one truth becomes clear: the significance of this discovery may go far beyond physical evidence. Because whether or not a structure beneath Mount Ararat is ever proven to be Noah's Ark, the deeper meaning behind the story has already shaped generations. In the Book of Genesis, Noah is described as a man who walked with God, someone who chose obedience in a time of widespread corruption. The Ark was not just a vessel, it was a place of protection, a means of preservation when everything else was being swept away. That message continues throughout Scripture. In Bible, Noah's faith is highlighted as the reason he acted, even before seeing any physical evidence of what was to come. It was not certainty that moved him, it was trust. And that idea echoes again in Bible, where the days of Noah are described as a time when people continued their lives as normal, unaware of what was approaching. The warning is not about fear, it is about awareness, about being prepared, even when everything appears unchanged. The Ark, in this sense, becomes more than history. It becomes a symbol of refuge, a symbol of obedience, a symbol of a new beginning. Even the promise that followed carries meaning. In Bible, God declares that the earth would never again be destroyed by a flood, establishing a covenant with humanity. That covenant represents not only judgment, but also mercy, a reminder that destruction is not the final word. So whether this discovery ultimately proves anything or not, it points back to something deeper, not just what was built, but why it was built. Because the story of Noah has never been only about a structure found on a mountain. It has always been about the choice to trust, the call to prepare, and the possibility of renewal, even after devastation. And perhaps that is why discoveries like this continue to capture attention. Not because they answer every question, but because they remind us that some truths are not only uncovered through science, they are also carried through faith. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching until the end.